There are different kinds of dyeing. There's ice dyeing, there's irrigation, there's liquid dyeing, there's immersion. And people think those are all different forms of tie-dye. And they're actually not. What they are different forms of delivery of the dye. The fiber doesn't care how the dye got in there, whether it got in there through liquid or ice dyeing or irrigation. It's just the form of delivery of the dye. Today's episode is about irrigation. It's one of my favorite topics. I've spent a ton of time doing it. It's incredibly joyful, incredibly organic, incredibly active. And so we talked about fiber, we talked about liquid, we talked about activation and batching or curing. And so today we're going to take those practices and you're going to start to really understand it. You're going to start to understand how dye moves through fabric and what effect temperature has on this. It's another variable. And so you're going to see it all today. When I started tie-dyeing, I started out doing ice dyeing. I did those couple of dyes you saw in the first episode that I did with liquid. And then I started ice dyeing. I loved the splits and the ease at which you could just put it in a bucket and throw some ice on it, throw some dye on it, and a couple days later you saw some magic. And I really had no idea what I was doing. I was dumping all kinds of dye on there, all kinds of ice, soda ash. I didn't know how much to do it. And then I would wait for days and days and days. I actually didn't understand how to read the fiber on the bottom side of it to understand if it was done. Right around that time, I found a guy by the name of John Krupitsky. I call him John K because none of us really know how to say his last name. But John K was posting these shirts and they looked different. They didn't look like liquid. They didn't look like ice. And I was like, man, there's something different about this. He mentioned he had a forum called the 1 Hour Tie-Dye. And so I found it on Facebook and I went in there and looked at it and he was playing open kimono basically, like, here's what I do, here are my ratios, here's how I do it. And a lot of the other folds you'll see later in the series are based off of what I learned there. And so I tried it out. It was very, very foreign. If you think about taking an item, mixing dye and soda ash together, putting it on top of it and then spraying the heck out of it with hot water, 150-degree water, it was like, this is wild. But as I got into it, I really started to enjoy it because with the hot water, it creates really, really interesting effects, like on this shirt here, where you get color all around it and the sinew is completely white. And I got really addicted to this effect and I wanted color everywhere and I wanted absolute white lines everywhere. And what you're going to learn is those are very interesting, different things and not naturally going to occur. And actually, here's an early version of one of Justin Biffer's shirt that was gifted to me, fortunately, by one of my friends. And Justin Biffer actually started doing hot water irrigation really from this form as well. And so what we're going to talk about is irrigation. And this shirt right here, this is some of my later stuff with irrigation, just to show you how far you can push it. And there's a lot going on here. You see crazy colors on the lines, you see black in here, you see other colors. And once I teach you how to do this, it opens up all kinds of possibilities. Today is going to be an experimentation day. We're going to do this live. I haven't actually picked the color yet. I'm going to figure that out as we walk over there and pick a color. And we're going to do a bunch of shirts. This is an incredibly fun way to tie-dye. I highly recommend it. And hopefully by the time we get done, you can tie-dye in your sink, in your bathroom, in your garage, wherever you need, as long as you have a little bit of space to create this. It's super easy, super fun. And so we're going to show you the extremes of this today. We're going to show you cold water. We're going to show you hot water. And then I'm going to kind of walk you through my theory on it and how I approach it. So you can create really interesting things and use temperature as a control and as a variable. Well, we're just about set up to run our experiments. Before we get started, I want to explain a couple concepts. There are different kinds of dyeing. There's ice dyeing, there's irrigation, which we're going to show you. There's liquid dyeing, there's immersion. And people think those are all different forms of tie-dye. And they're actually not. What they are different forms of delivery of the dye. And so the fiber doesn't care necessarily how the dye got in there, whether it got in there through liquid or ice dyeing or irrigation. It's just the form of delivery of the dye. And so I want to talk about splits. Splits are where a single color will start showing you the different components that it's made out of. It's beautiful. But what's going on with splits, and we'll start to tie all this together with the activation soda ash, but a dye, take for instance a black. It's made up of a bunch of different colors, really every color. And in that dye, those molecules of the different colors are still there. And they have different affinities, they have different masses. And so when they're allowed to just flow through the fabric, they separate at different rates, they settle in the fiber differently, and that's what causes the splits. We're gonna run a crazy experiment today. I have a dye here. This is a ProChem Aster. I think it's a special order, but I chose it for a couple of reasons. One, I've struggled with this color before. Two, it's a special order. And three, I just had a bunch of it. So we'll see how it goes. Again, this is a live studio. I don't know how this is gonna go. I've never actually ran all of these experiments at once, let alone with this color, but I think it'll show us exactly what's going on. So we are gonna have failures today, and that's part of it. So again, equipment-wise, I just wanna walk you through the equipment. It's very, very simple. There's nothing in here that's complicated. So I have a sprayer here. This is a Milwaukee sprayer. It's been more trouble than it's been worth. I would never do it again, and you'll see why, because my style of doing this has changed a lot. So you don't need this. Any standard pump sprayer, $5 pump sprayer, heck, you could do it with a spray bottle, right? So don't overthink it. All you're doing is you're gonna add water on top of it. And so we talked about how we apply the soda ash and the activation, and we're doing our soda ash either with the dye or after the dye is in the garment. Today, we're gonna mix the soda ash and the dye together. We're gonna hold that as a constant. And so we'll talk about some of the other theories out there, but that's gonna be a constant. We're not gonna change it. I'm gonna mix up a big vat in this tin over here, and then we're gonna sprinkle it on. We're gonna show it as the water hits it, as it moves, and we're gonna control those variables, and you'll get to see it live here today. This is just a tin. You can use baggie, you can use anything you have. And this is a 1/4 cup, which is 4 tablespoons. And so I'm gonna do 2 of these. And there's really nothing to it. This is just straight soda ash. I'm gonna add it in here, and then we're gonna add the dye. I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons of ProChem Aster. It's a pretty cool dye. It's really tough to work with. If I remember right, there's lots of blues and reds in there. It'll give us a lot of separation, and historically it's been a pain for me to work with. So why not do an experiment with it and see what happens? So I'm just gonna take 1, 2, 3, 4. So now in here we have our soda ash, we have our dye, and the most exciting part is the shake. I do recommend wearing a respirator. Dye is not great for your lungs. Soda ash is not great for your lungs. Protect yourself. And in here now, we essentially have dye mixed with soda ash in a 2-to-1 ratio, and that's our control for the dye. Okay, now we need water. Back when I started, and you'll see different techniques, moisture is your enemy. Or I'll be more particular, moisture without dye in it is your enemy. And so what we want to make sure that any moisture that gets into this item has dye in it. If it doesn't have dye in it, it's going to add moisture, it's going to fill that space that's left into it, and it will not allow us to get dye into the white. We're very careful and very cautious and conservative with the amount of liquid. We want to use the minimum amount of liquid required to get dye in the garment. So our first experiment, we're going to keep our water. At this point, this is just a thermometer. Get them on Amazon very cheaply. You can see those on our website. And I just use this because water is a setting. Water is a variable that we can control. So I'm gonna measure it just to see where it's at so we know. And this picture is at 98 degrees, okay? This is not 150 degrees. This is not ice dye water. And really you're just gonna add it into your sprayer. This is well water, no additives, nothing. And that was maybe 200, maybe 2 liters in there. And with this, I'm just gonna prime it just to make sure we've got water flowing. And we have water. Okay. And I'm gonna remove this other one because we don't wanna get any moisture on it. All of these are Ronstars. This is one of my favorite designs. It's really complex. It has lots of different layers. And for ice dyeing, it's just gorgeous. For irrigation, it's gorgeous. This is a very simple fold of a Ronstar, only using Sinew. There's still a lot of play in them. There's still a lot of loose fiber. I actually don't do them like this most of the time, but I think this loose fiber is going to really show you what happens when it gets wet and how dye travels through it. So each one of these is a Ronstar tied on. The control isn't quite there. There's some different sizes in here, but for the most part, they're all based off this design, and we'll see how each one responds. Fantastic design. I love it. That's what this shirt is, and we'll show you how that goes.